Well, the NFL offseason is here, and free agency, not quite yet, as the NFL New Year hasn't started. But with that being said, boy, have there been some interesting trade rumors swirling around in the NFL, and one of them pertains to the Los Angeles Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford. On one side, it makes a ton of sense for the Rams to consider dealing Stafford. Matthew Stafford is turning 37 years old, which is very old for a quarterback in the National Football League. He technically, from one's point of view, doesn't meet the Los Angeles Rams timeline, which is kind of interesting considering that they just went to the playoffs last season, which I'll talk about just now. The Rams probably are going to move on from Cooper Kupp sooner rather than later, as he too is getting old, and it would make sense to start anew and get Matthew Stafford the heck out of here. Besides, Sam Darnold is hitting the free agency list, and why not snatch him up and pay him a big contract? Stafford has drawn trade interest from the Las Vegas Raiders and New York Giants. The Raiders in particular have influence from Tom Brady, as Tom Brady is a minority owner, which honestly I keep forgetting. The Raiders have been such a poverty franchise, it's kind of crazy that Tom Brady is associated with that. Anyways, I don't think that him going to the Giants or Raiders is a good move for both parties. The Giants, honestly, they need to tear it all down. They need a full-scale rebuild. And Matthew Stafford is not a rebuild-type quarterback. He will get your team competitive, but I don't see him leading the Giants to become a contender just by adding him. The Giants are not one quarterback away from competing whatsoever. They need lots of time. They need a young guy to develop. And Matthew Stafford, if you think he doesn't meet the Rams timeline, he does not meet the Giants timeline whatsoever. Sure, it would be fun to see him go to Las Vegas and throw passes to Brock Bowers, but I just don't think that this is a good move. I think the Raiders need to find someone else, and whether it's Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, I just don't think Matthew Stafford is the play. And even from the Rams' point of view, I have no idea why they would move on from Matthew Stafford quite yet. Matthew Stafford still has plenty of time on his contract, as he's not a free agent until 2027. I'll be a senior in high school when that happens. That is still a long ways away. Besides, I don't think Matthew Stafford is a guy that the Rams are going to want to part ways with. Sure, Matthew Stafford might be 37 and be having grandchildren sooner rather than later. But Matthew Stafford actually had a really solid season in 2024 for the Rams. Stafford was 13th in the NFL passing yards, which means he had more than the most valuable player in football, Josh Allen. Stafford threw 20 touchdowns to 8 interceptions for a 93.7 quarterback rating, which is higher than it was in 2022 and 2023. Stafford surprisingly is showing relatively little signs of slowing down, and he's looking great for 37, whereas some other guys have slowed down tremendously when they hit number 3 and 7. And besides, it's not like the Rams had an absolutely terrible season last year. In fact, the Rams had a very, very successful season, and it looks like they have a very bright future if they keep all things wrapped up. The Rams won the division, stole it from the Niners as the Niners fell off an absolute cliff. They went to the playoffs, and they won a playoff game, which I would rather not talk about, but we have to on this topic because they trounced my Minnesota Vikings. I think Matt Stafford still has a lot of quality years of football left in him, and honestly, I think he could take the Rams farther than last year if they give him another year. I know what you Rams fans are thinking right now. Signing Stafford and bringing him back, not trading him, they wouldn't even have to re-sign him. He's still under contract till 2027. Yeah, you might be thinking that this is not the move for the future, but we can work around that, and actually this might be the smartest move for the future. Sam Darnold is most definitely not the answer for the Rams as they beat him in the playoffs. I don't think free agency is the spot to find their next face of the franchise. And the face of the franchise most certainly is not already on their active roster. Jimmy G or Stetson Bennett, they're not going to be the next future of the LA Rams. Here is what the LA Rams need to do for their quarterback position if they want to compete in the long run. And honestly, it makes a ton of sense, and I'm surprised more people aren't thinking of this already. This NFL draft upcoming, I don't think is going to be a very good one. I don't think there's a ton of great prospects, and I think it will end up kind of like the one with Brock Purdy, not a ton of big names that end up doing well in the NFL. With that said, the Rams' successful 2024 season landed them with not the best draft pick, but honestly, I think it might be the perfect situation for them to be in for the future. A lot of mock drafts having the Rams addressing the trenches, but honestly, what if they took a shot at a quarterback? Sure, this quarterback class isn't nearly as deep, but there are a few prospects that I'm really high on and I think have a huge upside, especially if they develop under Matthew Stafford for a couple of years. I really like this idea, and especially for some of these guys, I think it could be really fun to watch these guys in the LA Rams with Sean McVay in this legendary offense. Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders will likely be off the board, so I think Ole Miss's Jackson Dart has a huge upside to end up with the LA Rams and develop into a true difference maker in the NFL. He kind of reminds me of Josh Allen in his play style. He's got a good arm. He's a dual threat. This guy's a stud. Also, who I feel like people are really sleeping on is Oregon's Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel, for most of the season, was a Heisman frontrunner if it wasn't for Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. In my opinion, he was probably one of the better quarterbacks in college football. Sure, he wasn't there in the college football playoff when they needed him the most, but Dillon Gabriel was really solid. He's also another one of those veteran quarterbacks in college football, kind of like Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. They had the most success this season. They spent the most time in college football. I think that the experience does pay off, and Dillon Gabriel could have a ton of upside to be the Rams' new face of the franchise. But also, why not take a shot, not in the first round by any means, but maybe down the line at Ohio State's Will Howard. Will Howard had a very solid season except for the Michigan game. He was really solid. The offense was spectacular for Ohio State. Will Howard could be the guy for the LA Rams. Not in their first round pick. I think Jackson Dart would be a good choice if they really want to spend their first round pick on a quarterback. But Will Howard is a national champion for a reason. That Ohio State offense was lethal, and he was at the head of it with Jeremiah Smith and their two running backs. I think Will Howard could make a difference, and Jackson Dart. Honestly, Jackson Dart is probably the one that I like the most out of these three, and I think the Rams should strongly consider taking Jackson Dart with their first round pick. I think he could be a true difference maker for the LA Rams, especially if you give him time under Matthew Stafford to develop. That's my take. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you like this football content, please feel free to subscribe and like the video. And as always, we'll see you next time.